if I'm recruiting Travis Brown and he has 4 million followers, it really doesn't matter where Travis Brown, if he goes to Texas A&M or a Division III school, he's going to get fair market value deals based on his own.
What's going on, everyone? This is the Aggie Game Day Extra podcast. I'm Travis Brown, senior Texas A&M sports writer with KBTX, and Tyler Shaw and Max Crawford have left me here hanging. Well, okay, maybe not. I kind of left them hanging because I'm here in beautiful Destin, Florida for the SEC spring meetings at the Hilton Sandestin Resort. We got to talk to all kinds of people from A&M coaches and administrators to SEC commissioners and officials with the conference level and other coaches from other schools in the SEC to talk about some of the biggest issues of college athletics today. Some of that is the House settlement and how that's going to affect things moving forward once that's decided. College football playoff future formats, a 5+11, a 4-4-2-1. What's going to happen with that? 8 or 9 conference games in the SEC moving forward, and if they stick with 8, can you have 2 rivalry games? That's a big one with A&M fans as they look to keep that game with the Texas Longhorns going. But as a part of that, we got to talk to Texas A&M Athletic Director Trev Alberts for about 20-plus minutes on Tuesday, the first day of the meetings, to kind of get his take on where A&M sits with a lot of these issues. So for today's podcast, we're just going to play that whole interview in its totality so that you can get an idea of what he had to say and where A&M stands with the future of college athletics. So without further ado, here is Trev Alberts.
All right.
Trev, I'm going to start this by just, it's going to be asked similar. So, situation with your baseball coach.
Sure.
Do you feel that a change needs to be made?
Well, I'm not prepared to talk about the baseball program right now. Obviously, they just got done playing in Hoover, and we had these meetings here in Destin, so I've had a little bit of communication with Michael, but I'd love to get back to College Station, sit down with him, and sort of recap. So I think it's good to spend a little time, both he and I, as we kind of assess the situation. Obviously, he would tell you the exact same thing. We had some highs in baseball. Clearly, we fell short. It was a frustrating season and disappointing on a lot of different levels. But at the appropriate time, we'll be able to talk about baseball.
In the same vein, when you look at kind of balancing the checkbook and having to keep things competitive, how do you kind of go about walking that fine line between?
Well, I think you always there's always an economic factor, right, to making decisions. But I can assure you, in this situation, those decisions are not being driven economically. We'll do what we think is in the best long-term interest of our baseball program and our athletic department.
And when you look at the pending House settlement, if it gets approved, do you have any more steps in the direction of what that 20.5 split is going to be amongst sports?
Yeah, so we've met with all of our head coaches, obviously working hand in hand with General Welsh, the president of Texas A&M, and so we have a good plan. We're planning on, I think it was 255 scholarships prior to the proposed House settlement, and so whatever ends up happening in terms of what the roster spots are, Texas A&M is going to fully fund a scholarship for every roster spot. And so where we think that takes us is roughly into the 410. Obviously, the SEC ADs all voted to mandate an increase of $2.5 million of scholarships. So our hard cap, essentially, proposed hard cap with the settlement is $18 million. So, our objective and goal is every single one of our programs. Obviously, we start with football. It's the only revenue generator that we have at Texas A&M. But we are sitting down and looking at every single one of our programs and saying, today, A, we're going to keep all of our programs. B, we're going to create a financial strategy that every one of our programs can win at the highest level through resources. And that doesn't guarantee you're going to win, right? But we're going to fund them in a way that they can be successful. So right now, we've chosen 6 sports that we're going to share revenue with. We've communicated what those are with our coaches, and I'm not going to break those down for you today. But each of them sort of have an idea about where it goes. Part of this is just assessing the market. We need to get through some data in the first year, see what others are doing competitively. But I think we have a good strategy. The team's worked hard. It's an institutional decision. General Welsh has been very supportive as well, and we feel good about the fact that each of our programs are going to be resourced in a way that allows them to be as competitive as possible.
How have you tried to trim expenses since we met with you here a year ago?
Well, we've tried to look at every, obviously there's two different ways you can do it, right? There's expense optimization and then there's revenue generation. It's real simple. And so we've been fortunate. We had an MMR deal that was expiring, and so we were able to significantly increase our MMR. That starts in 26. That's going to be important. But, we worked with Deloitte. We've been going through our athletic department. We did some early on, and we just tried to really look at how do we find a way to eliminate redundancy of expenses? How do we do a better job of running our business like a business? And there's certain components of an athletic department you cannot run like a business. There's student services, there's academic support. We'll never run that like a business. We're not going to make business decisions. The rest of it, though, we do need to do that. And part of that is things like capital projects. We're blessed with incredible facilities. The 12th Man Foundation's done incredible work. The 12th Man's been great. But historically, we would do projects, and perhaps we didn't raise it all, so then we just take on some debt service or commercial paper. In this new reality, we simply cannot afford to add additional debt service. And so that's kind of, I think, those types of decisions is stopping that. We won't do projects that we don't have fully funded. For instance, with the baseball project, we actually sort of phased it out. So we have a phase one, that's a student development center. It's $28 million. That's all been privately raised. There's no debt service to it. Now we'll go into a phase two, which is really assigning, what demand is there for suites and club seats, and then we'll build it out, and we'll build what we can afford. And so those are just some small sort of things. We did a heat map on all of our workforce, try to take a look at, we're working with the 12th Man Foundation to look at how do we increase revenues, how do we cut costs, how do we better integrate. So I think those are some of the things. These were things we should be doing anyway, any intelligent business would be doing, but I think as a result of some of this, it puts you in a position that expedites your decision-making and thinking.
Once you get revenue sharing passed with the House settlement, will you greatly supplement with NIL money on top of the revenue sharing, or use that for the corporate model to deal with?
Well, I mean, so here's where we're all, here's the nuance to it all, right? Is everybody's trying to figure out fair market value NIL. So at the end of the day, we're all looking for a competitive advantage. But what is real is you have the rev share amount and you have the scholarship amount. What is undefined is how much fair market value NIL deals can you get through, NIL Go. And the institution or institutions that are most successful in getting that done, right? If you can organically, quote, grow your cap 3 to 5 or more per institution, then of course you have more resources than others. And so part of that I think is, it's been interesting without breaking down the whole Deloitte system. If I'm recruiting Travis Brown and he has 4 million followers, it really doesn't matter where Travis Brown, if he goes to Texas A&M or a Division III school, he's going to get fair market value deals based on his own. But the other side is it's the institution. And I think that's a really important thing, and it's for all of us to think through, is how are we consolidating, growing our brand collectively, not just in athletics, but it's the entire institution. And so while it isn't actually going to be equal in some, I think it's going to be fair. And so we don't know exactly how it's going to work. We're going to need, some data, and I think the system will get better that more puts into it. But I think it's very clear that some schools, based on the strength of their brand, right, will get deals through the system that might not be the same or reflective as other institutions. How that all works, I guess, remains to be seen.
And Texas has said it plans to allocate 75% of its revenue sharing to football. Do you think that'll kind of be a standard going rate in the SEC?
Yeah, well, I think each institution is going to do what they think is in their best interest, right? Like, we have not broken it down. Some institutions have said, okay, we're going to take a look at all of our revenue that each sport generates, and we're going to equate that percentage to the rev share. We didn't choose to do that at Texas A&M. I think each school is different culturally. That's why I think each institution has to make these decisions based on, what's important for them. For us, back to your point, I'm trying to allocate rev share in sports that I can grow revenue, because at the end of the day,
And it should be in basketball too, right?
Well, there's there's opportunities. I mean, what sports do you have additional seats? Where do you have attendance, right? And so you can sort of figure some of that out. And the rest of our sports, you look at scholarship increases, those types of things. So, and it doesn't mean it's in perpetuity, right? You all know where the pressure points are going to be. Some institutions going to allocate some percentage or some number for football. that perhaps is more than some of the others. And what do you think is going to happen? When your football coach says, well, I heard so-and-so's getting, $100 and I'm only getting 80, I can't be competitive. So I think it's just a period of time to see where it all sort of sorts out. Our goal is at Texas A&M, and I would tell you, I don't want to speak for my colleagues in the SEC, but there's a genuine desire to be great in every sport. We don't want to go down the path, at least I know I don't, want to go down the path of just investing in two sports and basically downsizing the support of every other sport. It's really not of interest to us. We want to have a broad-based athletic department, but we will never do anything that ultimately is harmful to the one sport that frankly drives the entire revenue engine of Texas A&M's athletic department.
How do you feel about an affiliation agreement, trying to get everybody more or less on the same page in terms of rules compliance?
I think it's critically important, Pat. Look, we're all defendant schools, 4 defendant conferences, and I think you inherently agree to this. Like if we're coming together to settle a lawsuit, we all have said, and I sat in a room. I sat in a room with all of our football coaches, and we asked them, do you want to be governed? Do you want to have rules? And the answer is always yes. But we want to make sure that Oregon's got the same rules we have, right? And so I think that's fair. Our room is 100% supportive of making sure that everybody understands the rules, is playing by the same rules, and understands what the enforcement mechanism is. We just have got to get out of this situation that, something happens you don't like, we run to our attorney general, we file suit. That chaos just isn't sustainable. So we're looking for a durable, system that actually has some stability and ultimate fairness. It will not be 100% equal, as we talked about earlier with fair market value NIL, but we think it's going to be fair. And so we're working hard at it.
Hey y'all, it's Max, and if you've been watching the pod, you know this by now, that we have a new official sponsor of the Aggie Game Day Extra podcast. And it is a familiar face. You know him, you have seen him around Aggieland for many, many years. Say hello to C&J Barbecue. Now, I don't know if there are many of you out there, but if you live in the Brazos Valley and you have not been to C&J Barbecue yet, what on earth are you guys doing? The crew at C&J started out smoking just about 20 pounds of meat a day in a tiny gas station on Harvey Road. Now, they serve over 2,200 pounds every single day across 3 locations. So you know it's good. They've fed President Bush, catered for Willie Nelson. Yeah, Willie. But most importantly, they've been feeding Aggies and locals for over 40 years. In fact, I had myself some at a catering event last weekend, and the brisket was absolutely amazing. Don't even get me started on the sides and the appetizers, because Justin is always cooking up some amazing stuff. Just get there, see, smell, and taste for yourself. Tell them the guys sent you. C&J Barbecue, a family tradition.
When you, same kind of thing on fair market value, would you just anticipate, especially in year one, that it could get a little weird, just given that I'm sure there are some metrics there, but the world doesn't know them.
Yeah, no, I think that was some of the questions, as we were thinking about. I think so many times, if you want to engender trust and credibility and stuff, transparency is important, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, in some of this, the level of transparency you can have, there's legal risk that prohibits you from doing that. But we want to start with as transparent as we possibly can be, either with the cap or any of this stuff we'd really like to do, because I think it engenders trust. But I think it's absolutely fair, and I don't think it's illogical to think that at first it's probably going to be a little wonky. I mean, this is a massive change, and there's going to be a lot of confusion. That doesn't mean we shouldn't stay the course. That doesn't mean we should not do it. It doesn't mean we should quit and give up. The alternative is, we've clearly said, is untenable. It's the system will learn. The system will get better. I've heard all the crazy, points and people scared. At the end of the day, this is the right thing to do. We need to get NIL back to what it really is, fair market value NIL. I tell the story all the time, but it's really funny. In 1994, the NFL had just kind of gotten, I think it was Kessler who led the way, free agency, right? You had, Reggie White went from the Eagles to the Packers, and the Players Association had our NIL rights as players. In my rookie year, I wasn't a very good player, but I got a grand total of $7,438 for my NIL. I just don't think that the NIL that we're talking about today is really reflective of reality. So we're doing rev share. We're going to increase scholarships. And then if we can get fair market value NIL with a system, that's competent and durable with time that people learn to understand better and trust, then I think we have a system that we can all abide by.
So
Are you
what
co-
about the alternative? Have there been any combos so far about like what happens if the judge decides not to approve the House settlement, or are we not jumping off that bridge yet?
We're not jumping off that bridge, but obviously, you always have to think about the what ifs, and we've had small conversations. I would just tell you, and again, you got to be very careful here. I do not speak for anybody but Trev Alberts. But I think the general sentiment is we may just go forward and share revenue anyway. I mean, we want to do this. I mean, we think we've built something that makes a lot of sense, that brings some, just, again, stability is the wrong word all the time, but, just bring some common sense to what we're doing. Because what we're currently doing is, there's a lot of angst, man. You guys can probably feel it. It's at the commissioner level, the president's level, the coach's level. I mean, and again, this is a little, I don't know what the right word is, but, from a personal perspective, it's just so meaningful to me. Like, I got to live this thing. Like, everything I have today, but my faith and my family is because I got to be a student athlete at the University of Nebraska. And I just think to myself, like, this is worth saving. It's going to look different. It might not, and it's not going to be perfect. The other thing that, to your point earlier, that we have to be careful about is when this thing starts, assuming a Judge Wilkin, and something's like doesn't work right, we can't be defensive. Like, we've worked hard on this. We can't be defensive and say, we'll try to prove people. We may have to adjust and adapt and acknowledge that didn't work. Now we got to go to this. That's okay. Like, we've never done this before. I think our intentions are pure. Our heart is where it needs to be. We want to do this. We just met with 4 student athletes before this who sat and talked about their experience. Like, this is worth doing, and we're going to fight really hard to make sure we continue in some sort of model that continues serving young people.
What about the sports that aren't getting part of the settlement? What are those conversations like? I mean, and I don't know how the schools are going to operate otherwise. Like, I cover Florida. I don't know if Scott's funding just 6 programs or he's doing 10. How did you make those decisions, and what was it like, and what was the reaction when it's like they're
I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but for me, right, like one of the things very early on when I met with the Board of Regents, I haven't been at Texas A&M very long, and I kind of walked them through different scenarios. This is an executive session, and I said, well, we have a couple options, one of which is we should downsize our competitive excellence vision. Are you okay with that? Nobody raised their hands. Nobody, nobody in Aggie land's interested in not winning at everything, in every one of these sports. And so my focus has been really trying to understand the market, understand where we can drive revenue, because at the end of the day, we have to pay for it. But how do we resource every program in a way that they can compete at the highest level? That's the goal. This whole thing could change in year 3. Some of us might have to tell some programs, I'm sorry, we're not able to fund you in a way to win championships. There could be another 5 years down the road we say, I'm sorry, we're no longer going to be able to sponsor your sport. But what I'm encouraged about at Texas A&M is we have a very good strategy on today being able to do all those. I don't know how some of my colleagues have chosen to do it, but we've had spreadsheets upon spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. The hardest part of which has been about every month we tear it up because the goalpost moved over here, and now we're talking about grandfathering people. And part of our expense reduction was, since we're having 19% fewer student athletes, should there be a corresponding 19% reduction in workforce? I'm not saying we're doing that, but see, that's kind of the thinking that you're sort of going through, but it just keeps changing. And so, it's been an interesting process.
How frustrating has this year been for you personally with, that's the way the baseball and softball seasons ended up? Oh, no, I mean, look, you'll learn, I've been at this, quote, competition business for a long, long time, and there are days when you win, and there are days when you lose, and there are some weekends that I walk around the house and I'm man, we're really good at this, honey, and there are weekends when it feels like we just cannot win a thing. So that's just part of what you do. You fight every day, and we'll win some, we'll lose some. There were some disappointments. There's no doubt about it. But we got really good people, and I think part of this is just getting everything to settle down a little bit will help create some stability in all that area too.
Trev, how much did transfer portal windows come up today? And then, earlier today, Kirby Smart said he thought implementation committee could have the final say in that. Like, is that true, and how would that even work out?
Well, I don't, I read some of the comments. I love Kirby a lot. We haven't had a chance to meet with our football coaches. We're going to be doing that tomorrow, I think, sort of kind of go through a lot of that. But I do think there is some common sense in the sequencing of, first thing we got to do is get the settlement approved. We get that approved, right? And then we get the new entity up and running, right? And then we get the leadership in that up and running. And then you can really dive into all those really important things. Of course, the coaches, the number one thing on their list is, hey, the transfer portal and the calendar. And that all makes sense. But none of that matters if we can't get all this stuff done over here first.
Right.
So I think there's a logical sequence to it. I think that's not real controversial. I mean, I think the coaches are very much aligned with, we've got to do something now. Is it in the spring or is it, late winter? I mean, you can argue the merits of both of those, but I do think that, I think a centralized voice would be a positive thing too. So, you're not going to start a new entity until you actually have a settlement. But I think when you get leadership there, I think you can actually have some strong, communication about that too.
How much have you and other athletic directors asked the question, should we still be a part of the NCAA?
Well, I mean, only probably in the moments where you just get so frustrated with, process. I don't really. I feel confident personally that the new entity that's being created will have the autonomy that it needs to ultimately allow us to run our business in a way that we need. There's a natural tethering to the NCAA through things like championships, that's fine. Diving into, the numbers of people on committees on decision making and the percentages, yeah, that's all really important to us. At the end of the day, we have to be able to make decisions. We can't not make decisions quickly. You have to be nimble. You have to do these things and be, react. So, but I can tell you that I don't think it's a topic of conversation of driving, hey, let's leave the NCAA. I think there's a good plan in place. We need to see it through and keep working hard together, and I'm confident we're going to get there.
I know you were on the
thought that the committee that you serve on would have the jurisdiction on determining when the portal window transpires. Is that your understanding?
Well, I don't know that it's my understanding yet. We kind of talked about that right before you got here, I think. But the reality is I think that entity that's being created can take a hard look and dive into those types of things. But I don't think any final decisions have been made about those types of things. But it likely would be done outside of the NCAA process.
Trev, would you like the SEC meetings to end with sort of a coalesce, the conference coalescing around a playoff format that they would support?
Well, yeah, a lot of nuance to that too. Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about that. We've seen a lot of different models. A lot of them have strong merit, right? But for us in the SEC, there's a lot at stake, right? We play 8 conference games. Other conferences play 9. There's economics around that 9th game that are important. How does it impact the college football playoff? What is, who's involved in deciding who's actually going to make the college football playoff? What does that look like? How much is data and analytics a part of making that decision? What is the distribution? Are we going? We going to have 4 auto bids? Are we not? There's just right now we need some answers, and but it's obvious that we're reaching a deadline in terms of time that we're going to have to make another decision. Are we going to stay at 8? Or are we going to go to 9? And we need some other answers first before we can make an informed decision on that.
Which do you favor? You favor 8 or 9?
I personally, again, now I'm going to say this with some caveats, right? If we get where I think we can get on the playoff, which concerns me, yeah, I'd like to go to 9 games. I think 9 games makes sense for a lot of different reasons, but it doesn't make sense for us if we're not guaranteed to be protected. I mean, it's hard if you just look at the data, and I hope you get it, if you look at the data, the strength of all these conferences are great. What separates the SEC is the top to the bottom strength, right? I played in the old Big 8, where with all due respect to some of them, there was basically 2 teams, right? And it's a different deal when you're not playing Oklahoma every week.
Right.
That's how it was when I played. And then Nebraska, went to the Big 12 and now to the Big 10. It's just a different as you look at the depth and strength of each of these leagues. And so that data is real. So those things have to be taken into consideration in terms of who's gaining access to the college football playoff. Because you got to understand now, as you expand the playoff and you think about our fan bases, getting into the college football playoff is going to be really important. And if we're not confident that the decision making about who gets in and why and what are the metrics around it, it's going to be really hard for some of my colleagues to get to the 9 games.
Probably means no resolution on that this week then, right? Because you're not going to know about 4
Well,
games this week.
like I said, we've got a timeline that's getting tight, and we recognize that. It seems like everything's kind of coming to a head.
Yeah.
In a way, it's a little bit frustrating. In another way, it feels good because eventually it feels like we're actually going to get some of this dealt with.
Last one.
When I know you were on the committee for NIL Go, or to kind of put that
I was on
together.
TAPS.
Yeah. What does it look similar to those initial conversations, and how concerned are you about the possible legality of it with any kind of?
Oh, I'm really confident in the work that's gone into it. I really am. It's a really smart, well thought out. The reality, though, is not a lot of people understand it or know about it, which leads them to the conclusion of, hey, it won't work, or it won't be fair, or they don't know what they're doing. And none of those things are true. The system has to be given a chance. I think Deloitte's done a masterful job. I think LBI's done a great job. They have all kinds of experience in this in the pro leagues. I mean, they're really helping, and now the two of them are going to start working on making sure that the two of them are sort of integrated. I want to say one last thing. I know AC said last question, and I have no agenda behind this other than to say this for real. I want to say how fortunate the Southeastern Conference is to have Greg Sankey as our leader during these times. And I just mean that. Like, this is Greg's institutional knowledge, his experience, his understanding. He's seen so much, and I just can't imagine going through what we're going through right now without his leadership. And I just want to salute him in a way because of all the stuff he's dealing with, working every day on behalf of the membership. It's heavy, and there's a lot. And Greg cares about, of course he's fighting for the SEC, but he cares deeply about the enterprise. He understands the importance of college athletics to the whole system. And so I just think he brings the right balance, perspective, intellect, he's poised, just all the right stuff. And we're really fortunate to have Greg Sankey as our leader.
A big thanks to Trev Alberts for giving us a few minutes of his time this week to go over where A&M stands in the future of college athletics. And so that's all we really have this week. I got to catch a plane back to BCS so we can get this summer started. So for the absent Tyler Shaw and Max Crawford, I'm Travis Brown. This is the Aggie Game Day Extra podcast on location in Destin, Florida. We'll see you next week.